boys and girls. Topic D focuses on the application of fractions to tell time. So for today's station, you're going to learn how to construct a paper clock similar to the one that you see here by partitioning a circle into halves and into quarters to tell time to the half hour and to the quarter hours. Now for this station, you're going to need the following materials. You're going to need your lesson 13 template. It will have your entire clock, your minute hand, and your hour hand. You're going to need a variety of colors. I'm using pens, but I would prefer if you use fine tip markers. You need one dark color. I'm also going to use a Sharpie, but as well as I would like you to use a fine tip marker. You need 2 different colored highlighters, 1 pair of scissors, and finally, I'm going to pass out and have for you a brad. Now the first step in constructing our paper clock is to cut out our circle. Now if you take a look at your template, you'll notice that there's 2 different kinds of lines on our circle. The first that you see is this sharp black line. This is the line that we want to avoid. The next you'll see is this dotted line. This is the one that we want to cut out. If we carefully take our scissors and we cut along this dotted line all the way around our circle and we cut it out, we will have a clock template that'll look something like this. Please take the next couple moments to do so yourself. So far in our project, we have one whole circle. Right now, I took one of my colors, preferably one of my bright colored markers, in my case a pen, and I found the very top of my clock. I found the line that is the straightest. It's called a horizontal line, and it's at the very top of my clock. I highlighted it in pink so that's going to be easier for you to tell, because the second step, I'm going to take my whole clock and I want to fold it in half. Another word for folding it in half is called partitioning it in half. So for you, I'm going to take it and fold it backwards on the dotted line. I need to use 2 hands. Stay as close to the dotted line as possible. Does it have to be perfect? Absolutely not. But I'm going to try my best. Make a nice solid crease. And now look at that. I have 2 halves. My fractional unit is called 2 halves. You just completed step 2. In order to show that I really have 2 halves on my clock, I want to use one of the colors of my highlighter. So for this case, I'm going to pick blue, just because. And here is my clock. I'm going to take my clock. Do you notice how I have my pink still at the top? I'm going to take my blue highlighter and make a nice long vertical line that's going up and down, all the way down. So I partition my clock into 2 halves. Can you do the same? Right now you are almost complete with step number 3. The last thing you would need to do is fill in the number that goes at the exact top of your clock and the number that goes at the exact bottom of your clock. Now, if we take a look at the clock that we've been working with in our classroom, the number at the exact top would be 12, and the number at the exact bottom would be 6. Can you go ahead and match those 2 numbers on your paper clock that you just built? I will show you what mine looks like. I put a 12 at the top and a 6 at the bottom. Can you do the same? Now we've taken our complete whole circle and we've partitioned into half. But now what happens when we partition it one more time and we cut those halves into halves? When we did this with our 2D shapes, our 2-dimensional shapes, we called this force. So now I would like it if you take your other highlighter, your opposite color, and go the other way, which would be a horizontal line, and draw a horizontal line partitioning your clock into 4 quarters, or fourths. Now, in order to move on to step number 4, we're going to have to label our paper clocks with the times that go to those lines that we just did when we partitioned our halves into halves. So when we look at our classroom clock one more time, when we cut our new clock into fourths, if we start at 12, because we always start at 12 when we look at a clock, and we count by fours, if we go 1, 2, 3, 4s, I know I'll have ended on 3. I'm going to label 3 on my new line to the right of my green label. Notice what I did on my clock. And I'm still going to use pink because pinks are going to be my benchmark on my paper clock. So now if I continue counting by fours, 3, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 6. I've already done 6. 1, 7 is 2, 8 is 3, 9 is 4. 9 would be my last benchmark. One, 2, 3, 4, and I end back at 12. Now, can you do the same? Can you match your paper clocks with the same 4 benchmarks that I have with a 12, 3, 6, and 9? Congratulations, we got to step 4. Now, step 4, we're just going to do one quick review before we finally fill in our whole clock. Now, we started with one whole circle, and to get 2 halves, we partitioned our circle vertically right down the middle. We partitioned one whole circle vertically down the middle to get 2 halves. That's what our blue line represents. Then, in order to get fourths from a circle, we partitioned our halves into halves. We cut them one more time. That's what our green horizontal line was. So now our clock was cut into 4 equal parts. Do you have a clock that looks just like mine? I really hope so. Now let's move on to step number 5. We've partitioned our whole circle clock into halves and into fourths. But now we want to label our clock. So if we take a look at our classroom clock, we notice that each, instead of fourths, hour, when we start at 12, goes up by 1. We start at 1, it goes to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and it ends at 12. So I'm going to draw, here's where my Sharpie comes in, or my dark marker, in your case a dark marker, and I want to label my entire clock with the hours starting by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Now, if you did this correctly so far, you will not have to use your dark marker to fill in the numbers 12, 3, 9, or 6. Why? Because those were our benchmarks filled in our lighter color from before. Does your clock look like my clock? So for step number 6, this will be the final labeling piece for your paper clock. Now we're going to label not the hours, but the minutes of our clock. So if you take a look at our classroom clock, you'll notice that again, if we start with 12, we start with 60. But then we count by 5s as we go around our clock. So, if I skip count by 5s, I go 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60. And 60 is where I stop. So now, this is where that blank space right here above our numbers. That's why we didn't cut the space out from before. That blank space. If we start at our 12, we're going to put a 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60, until we go all the way around our clock counting by fives. Can your clock match mine? Step 7 might be a fun one. From our template, we have not used any of these arrows from before, but these are the same arrows that we find when we look at our classroom clock. This little arrow is known as the hour arrow, and this is the same one that points directly to each hour hand that we see on our clock. The long arrow is known as the minute hand, and it's the same one that points directly to all those teeny tiny tick marks known as our minutes. So this is the point where I want you to carefully take your scissors, and I need you to cut right around this solid black line until you have 2 different arrows, 1 hour and 1 minute hand. Can you do that right now? Step 8 is even better. Now it's your turn to get to color. Color one color of your choice for your minute hand and a different color for your hour hand. Notice how I have 2 different colors because I want to make them very different on my clock, so it will help me when I start remembering all my different times. Step 9 is optional. If you want to take your clock and start coloring each section into a different color, that is totally your choice, but please take that time to make that choice right now and complete it if you want to. Finally, we have come to step number 10. Now this might be the trickiest step, so I want you to watch very carefully. For this step, I need my completed clock, I need my hour hand, my minute hand, and I need that brad from before. So what I'm first going to do is take my hour hand and line it up with my minute hand. You'll notice that there's 2 dark dots. I want to cover them completely. I'm choosing to put my hour hand over my minute hand because it's smaller, so I can see where both of my arrows line up. Now holding them together with my left hand and my clock in my right hand, and notice that my 12 is always at my top because the 12 is at the top of our clocks. I'm going to take my arrows and try my very best to put those black dots on the black dot of my clock. See how I just crinkled my clock a little bit? That doesn't matter. It'll straighten out in the end. I'm pinching them very tight so I do not lose my grip. In my right hand, I'm taking my brad. Now this is where I'm going to have to focus my attention. I'm taking my brad and I'm going to poke a nice, strong hole right through that circle hole. Is it right through the center? Nope. Did I try my best? Yes. And on the very back, I hold it and I spread it open. So it looks like this. Okay? I want you to practice right now for me. Thanks. And there you go. We started with this template of an open face circle that was 1 hole, and we turned it into this beautiful, beautiful clock that we not only partitioned into halves, but we also partitioned it into 4s or into quarters. And we also took this clock and we can tell our time to the nearest quarters, or the nearest hour, or the nearest half hour. Way to go, guys. Awesome job.